All right. Well, my clock says it's noon, so we'll go ahead and get started. You may hear a few more people chime in as we start, and we do ask that if you can, please mute on your end so that we can minimize the background noise. But I'd like to welcome you all to Grow Nebraska's June 3rd Thursday training on exporting. I'm Heidi Garvin. I'm a program services consultant for Grow, and part of my job is to facilitate training opportunities like these. For those of you who don't know, Grow Nebraska is a nonprofit focused on helping you to make a sustainable living in anywhere in Nebraska. So we do this through promotion, market access, and educational opportunities like this. If you have any questions about membership or about what we do, I will be sending you my contact information after the call. Also, our third Thursday trainings would not be possible without help from our wonderful sponsors, and this month's training is actually sponsored by funds provided by the local food promotion program of the Agricultural Marketing Service, which is part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And we are very thankful for their help and for making this possible. Now, the reason we are all here to learn about exporting, we have with us today Molly Burns and Paul Weiss from the Food Export of the Midwest. And so Paul and Molly, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much, Heidi, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to run through our presentation, but if any questions come up, please save those for the end. We should have plenty of time for question and answers at the end. So just let us know if anything crosses your mind as we go along. We are going to follow along with the handout for today, so we'll try to keep everybody on what page we're on and everything. But feel free to stop us if we're moving too fast or not talking loud or anything like that. So as Heidi mentioned, my name is Molly Burns, and I'm the Branded Program Manager at Food Export Midwest. Paul will get into more of what we do, but we're out of Chicago, and we help promote the export of food and agricultural products, especially those from the Midwest and from Nebraska. Today, if we move to slide 2, we're looking at why companies should consider exporting, particularly those that are food and agricultural based. What we want to cover today is just generally why companies should consider exporting and some statistics on what kinds of products and the volume of how products are shipped overseas. We'll talk a little bit about how to gain export education for your company, either through organizations like Food Export or other similar organizations. Then we'll get into how to meet qualified buyers. A lot of times, you might get emails or something that may look like spam that are from international buyers. So we want to discuss smart and effective ways to meet qualified foreign buyers. And finally, there are some programs out there that can help you get reimbursed for international marketing expenses, which is key. Once you create those connections with foreign buyers, you may want to do further marketing in that country. So we want to discuss some opportunities available, some funding pots that can help you out when you're doing international marketing. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll move to slide 3. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about why it's important to export. And it's just generally a great way to supplement the domestic sales that your company may already have. One often quoted saying is that 95% of the world's consumers are located outside of the U.S. So there could be a huge pool of consumers for your products that you aren't considering if you're not looking at exporting. It's a great way to diversify market risk and offset any lags in domestic demand. We saw this a lot in the economic downturn in 2008. There was a huge decline in sales for many of our food companies at that time. But in terms of their export sales, they were able to diversify and manage some of that risk by looking at exporting. And they did this on a number of different scales. Maybe it was just a couple shipments that they sent to Canada, or maybe it was a couple containers that they sent to China. You could do it on a number of different scales. So it's not all or nothing. It's just a great opportunity to manage, any ups and downs in the U.S. market. We also see it as a way to extend your product life cycles. So you're able to find new uses for product. Maybe you're seeing that a flavor isn't working very well in the U.S., but you have a ton of inventory for that product. Export could be a good way to offload that. It can also help you with the idle capacity, as I mentioned, and then help reduce unit costs as well. On slide 4, just some more reasons why you should consider exporting. Overseas markets are opening up at a huge rate, much more than they had been even a couple decades ago. You'll hear a lot about various free trade agreements that are popping up. The U.S. has spent a lot of time creating these free trade agreements with many markets, including South Korea, Colombia, NAFTA is the most famous with Canada and Mexico. We have a lot of free trade agreements, and what these do is allow you to ship your product to another market without incurring any taxes or tariffs, or in some cases have those taxes and tariffs be incredibly lower than they should be. One example I've heard is with beef that was being shipped and exported to South Korea. It was like 100% or more in tariffs you'd have to pay to ship U.S. beef to South Korea. But with the new free trade agreement, those tariffs are going down over the next 10, 15 years and will eventually be eliminated. So those markets are a great first step for companies looking at exporting because your product doesn't have to seriously increase in price to be competitive in the market. Overseas markets are growing. We hear a lot about the increasing middle class. There's a lot of consumers that have more buying power overseas than they ever have before, and a lot of them want to use that extra money to buy nicer food products and nicer products, especially those that come from the U.S. Overseas markets are also developing. They're becoming more accepting of different tastes, and they want to try new flavors and new foods. You know, being able to try new cuisines is a huge part of the growth internationally, and so being able to use U.S. foods to that benefit is a huge, a great way to earn more sales for your company and grow your product and your market share. Move to slide 5. One of the big things that we always say is that the U.S. has a huge competitive advantage when it comes to exporting. The brand Made in the USA is widely recognized, and it's recognized both for its quality and safety and consistency. We have one of the best food systems in the world, if not the best, and our food safety considerations are among the highest. So people know worldwide when they see a product made in the USA that this is a high-quality product, and it's worth the price. It's worth paying whatever they can to get that product. We have a great reputation out there, and it makes it a great situation for your brand to be able to take advantage of already a system that's in your favor, that already wants to work with you. Move to slide 6 on export readiness. So there's a number of ways, to see if your company is ready to start exporting. And we see companies that, maybe they've never had U.S. sales and they're exporting, or others that, they've been doing U.S. sales for years but are just starting to look at exporting. But these are some of the ways that we know companies are really prepared and ready to take on any challenges related to exporting. We want to see product success U.S.-wide. We want to make sure that you have the capacity to handle exports. If a buyer comes to you and they want to buy a couple pallets or maybe half a container of your product, then they want to be able to see that you can provide the volume for that. You will, and Paul will get into this more later, but very often you need to do package and label modifications for foreign markets. This would involve translating your label into the local language, changing into the metric system for your ingredients label, that kind of thing. So making sure you can handle some of that time and money that goes into those modifications. You may need to modify your product, perhaps the package size of your product or the flavors of your product may be more sellable in another flavor or something. We always like to see commitment from the top. So we sometimes struggle with companies where maybe the international salesperson is all gung-ho about exporting, but they don't get any buy-in from the executive level. And it's hard to make a real difference and make a real push for exporting if it's not a top-down approach. We want to see the executive level really taking this seriously and knowing that you may not get your first export sale for a year or for 18 months. But if you give it time, you will eventually make a sale, and it will eventually benefit your company in a positive way. We always want companies to have as much export knowledge as possible, and that's where organizations like Food Export and the Commercial Service and others are here to help. There's a lot of ways to learn about exporting and see how it would fit well with your business. You know, if you have previous export experience, that's a dead ringer. You're good to go. You want to know about codes. You will need to have a harmonized system code for your product. This is an international coding system that gives all products a code based on their industry, and the code determines your tariff, or, for example, for free trade agreements, you know, how low your tariff is going to be. This code's important, and it's a great way to, you know, take a first step in exporting just to see what's your code, you know, what would that involve with your product. You can also do a lot of country market research. There's a lot of resources out there, and I'll get into that in a minute. But there's a lot of ability to look and see what is Canada interested in importing, what is South Korea interested in importing, what market is the best fit for my product. So definitely consider doing some market research before you jump into meeting buyers and start wanting to export your product overseas. Finally, we talk a lot about an international marketing plan. So this is developing a year-long, 5-year-long plan that determines what your company is going to do to be able to make your first export sale or be able to grow your market share within a specific country. We have a lot of resources on our end. We've done a whole webinar related to this topic. So there's a lot of resources to help you develop this plan and decide what's the right time frame for your company to make this type of export sale happen. We'll move to slide 7, the do's and don'ts. So we'll start with the do's, what you should do if you are interested in starting exporting. The first thing is just back to that exporter education. Make sure you educate yourself. You or someone at your company is going to need to take the time to read a decent amount about how to start exporting. We've got all the reading material on hand. You'll just have to be able to make that happen. So be sure that that's on your radar when you're getting ready. We want you to create an export business plan or an international marketing plan. We want to see that you have a dedication to making this happen, that you're ready to develop your product and your packaging however necessary to make it happen, that you have the production capacity, as we mentioned before, and that you have your expectations set at a reasonable level. You're not going to make a sale in the first couple of months. Some people do, but it's relatively unlikely. So we just want you to know that there's plenty of time involved, but it does pay off in the end. Don'ts would involve being unprepared. You know, if you get unexpected trade leads, like I was mentioning, perhaps emails in your inbox that come through from foreign buyers. We see this all the time where companies come to us and they are getting a trade lead for the first time. That's a really serious, really good one, but they just have not ever read or educated themselves about exporting before. The sooner you learn, the sooner you'll be prepared to handle really great trade leads like that. So be sure to just read up on it as soon as you can. Don't be impatient. As I mentioned, it's going to be, you know, maybe a year, maybe only 6 months, maybe 18 months. It can take a while. So be ready to expect that time frame. And then just don't wait. This is a huge opportunity for any U.S. company, and there's a plethora of resources out there that can help you make this happen. So we definitely want you to take advantage of those and make exporting a part of your company's plan. Okay, we'll move to the next slide on resources. I was mentioning that there's a lot of resources available, and unfortunately this slide I failed to update. We did this presentation for a group in Missouri, so a lot of these are Missouri related. But there are resources and organizations in Nebraska that are incredibly similar. The Nebraska Department of Agriculture is a huge partner of Food Exports and also Grow Nebraska, and they're a great resource to help you get started with exporting as well. I will send out after this meeting the information on the website for the Nebraska Department of Ag. The U.S. Commercial Service is also an important arm in the exporting world. So Food Export is funded through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Paul will get into more details on this, but essentially our role is to be the international arm of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, their exporting arm. There's also an exporting arm for the U.S. Department of Commerce, and that's called U.S. Commercial Service. And their role is to help with products that are not agriculturally based, so manufacturing goods, consumer goods, farming equipment, health and beauty products, whatever you could think of, they would handle the export of that. So they're also a great resource. We have a really great commercial service officer in Omaha, Meredith Bond, who some of you may have met before, and she's a great resource for anyone looking to export as well. Nebraska also has small business development centers. I believe there are 3 spread out through the state. These are great resources for companies that are not only looking to export, but also looking to grow their business domestically or just within the state. They're a great way for companies to get started and to find other local resources available to them. I'll send out after this a list of the small business development centers. I know them well, and they're great resources. As I mentioned, the U.S. Department of Agriculture is our funder, and they also offer other international programs. There's a lot of different organizations that the U.S. Department of Agriculture funds that makes exporting a priority, so definitely make sure to check out their website. And finally, our Food Export website has all of our information and a lot of this education information that we've discussed. So be sure to check out our website after this and just see if what we do is of any fit to you. All right, so we'll move to the next portion of our presentation and the next slide, top U.S. exports for consumer-ready food products. So the way the U.S. Department of Ag divides out different trade statistics is based on the consumer of the product. So any food that's consumed by humans or agricultural products consumed by humans falls into consumer-ready food products. And that's the majority of what I believe you guys would be working on and what Food Export works on. There's also companies that do intermediate goods, processing soybeans or corn or feed. And then there's bulk commodities where you would get your just straight corn and soybeans and such. Today I specifically want to look at the consumer-oriented angle. This is where all of the value-added food and agricultural products would be located. So we'll move to the next slide, U.S. consumer-oriented ag products. I took a look at the 2015 top ag exports from the U.S. Ag exports in the consumer-oriented category top $54 billion, which is huge. Ag exports are the only exports where we have a trade surplus. We ship more overseas than we import, which is a great news for our country. It shows how well our agricultural system is used. But some of the top exports that we had last year were tree nuts, beef and beef products, which is a huge Nebraska export, as you'll see on the next slide. Any prepared foods, so this would be anything that's ready to eat, like a frozen dinner or a pot pie or something like that. Pork products, any sort of dairy products, cheeses and milk powders, etc. We ship a lot of fresh fruit and processed vegetables. You'll see a lot of poultry meat also shipped. Snack foods is a huge category for us as well as for exports in general. We ship a lot of popcorn and snack chips, that kind of thing, cookies, etc. And finally, fresh vegetables rounds it out. All of this data is located via the U.S. Census Bureau, and then the U.S. Department of Agriculture divides it out into just agricultural stats. So if you're interested, I included the website for where you can find this trade data if you'd like to look into it more. The next slide is top Nebraska Ag Exports for 2015. You'll see these categories are a little bit different than the U.S.-oriented ones. Of course, our big export was beef and beef products. That by far is the largest category for Nebraska exports. And it's a huge boon to the Nebraska economy to be able to export those products. We also did a lot of hinds and skins, soybeans, pork and pork products, and of course, corn. So those are some of our top products as we go through. The next slide is 2015 top markets for U.S. exports. I put this in here just to give you guys an idea of some key markets to look at when you're first looking at exporting. Markets where U.S. products are already being shipped are a great opportunity for new companies because those markets are already used to importing from the U.S. They're already used to working with U.S. suppliers, so it's a great first step for a new company. You'll see Canada and Mexico top the list. These two countries are part of our NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, so we have a lot of benefits to exporting to those two markets.
He said his phone isn't working.
The next ones are Japan, Hong Kong, and South Korea and China. We see a lot of interest growing from Asia in recent years, so definitely consider Asia when you're looking at exporting. China's a really big market, and I think a lot of people consider just China when they look at Asia, but there's a lot of other markets in Asia that are a good first step. Smaller markets like Taiwan or South Korea or Hong Kong are good first steps for smaller businesses. Finally, you've got some European countries, Netherlands and the UK. The UK is a good market for specialty food products. They're all about what's new and different and interesting. So if you're making any sort of specialized food product, you certainly could find some good buyers in the UK. And finally, Australia is a big buyer of U.S. food products as well. All right, that wraps up my portion of the presentation. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Paul Weiss. He is the liaison in our office for Nebraska, and so that means he would be your first point of contact for any interest in food export programs or just for any further questions. He's going to talk a bit more about what we do and how you might be able to benefit from our programs. So without further ado, I'll give it over to Paul.
All right. Thank you so much, Molly. Being a Nebraska native, I could hear the pride in Molly's voice talking about the exports of beef and corn from Nebraska. So I'm going to now talk a little bit about the Food Export Association, how we fit into the grand scheme of everything, and the programs and services that we offer that are available to Nebraska food and agricultural companies. So let's go ahead and move to the slide that says, who is Food Export Midwest at the top. So we are a private, nonprofit international trade association. Our members are actually the different state agricultural promotion agencies. So if any companies want to work with us, sometimes they ask, what do we have to do to become a member of your association? Nothing that you have to do. You can actually just participate in whatever programs are of interest to you. We work with producers throughout the Midwest, especially Nebraska companies. Usually we try to focus on small and medium-sized U.S. producers, and then definitely products that are value-added and consumer-oriented is our specialty. And our mission, again, is just to help promote the exports of Midwestern food and agricultural products. And if we can help companies increase their international exports and their international sales, then we bring more positive economic impact to the U.S., more jobs, et cetera. So moving on to the next slide, participant in FAS. So this slide essentially is just letting you know we get the majority of the funding for our programs and services from the Foreign Agricultural Service, being the international branch of the USDA. So in short, we're a federally funded program. And moving on to the next slide, that starts, or the title is State Regional Trade Groups. So Food Export Midwest, we're actually one of 4 different state regional trade groups represented throughout the country. We have what we call a strategic alliance with Food Export Northeast. So we share an executive director and some staff members, and in that sense we can also pool together some of our resources with them to offer even more programs to our companies, so that's one of the benefits. And then there's a group that helps the southern United States, that's SUSTA, and then for companies that are headquartered in states in the western region, they can work with WUSADA. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, which is our basically just outlining who are our Midwest member states. So our member state in Nebraska is actually the Nebraska Department of Agriculture. Moving on to the next slide, Nebraska and Midwestern products. So this is basically, again, just giving an overview of the types of products that we work with. A lot of branded products, snack foods, convenience foods, natural products, specialty foods, private label, as well as food ingredients and food service products. And we do a couple activities every year with value-added feed ingredients, and then seafood as well. That's mostly our Northeast, and some other value-added agricultural products. All right, moving on to the next slide, our in-market representatives. So one of the ways, or really one of the most important ways that we can offer our programs and services is because we have a network of in-market representatives around the world, and these are food industry experts in the different countries that they work in. So these individuals we contract to help us out with when they do market research for our companies. We can use them to nominate buyers that we bring for our buyers mission events, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And then they also help us with organizing trade missions. They help out at international trade shows using our Food Show Plus service. So really, really valuable and knowledgeable in-market representatives that we utilize around the world. Moving to the next slide, programs and services. So this is a quick overview of everything that we offer. Exporter education, which I'll talk about in just a second. Market entry, these are programs that are designed to help connect you with qualified international buyers. And then market promotion, which is mostly our branded program, which can help you double your international marketing budget by providing 50% reimbursement on international marketing expenses. I'll get into that as well. So moving on to the next slide, exporter education. So this slide is just an overview of what are some of the programs that we offer that can help companies understand more on like the how-to of exporting. We do newsletters that give you updates on market trends and what countries are looking for what kind of products. It's free and easy to get signed up for our newsletters if you're interested in that information. We offer what we call our Export Essentials Online. This is basically just like a module, like we compare it to almost like a college course on exporting. You can access that on our website at any time if you go to our site and then click on Export Essentials. And then it's broken down by category. So you can read it at your leisure and then focus on specific categories like pricing, market research, things like that that might be of interest to you. Our Food Export Helpline. This one is an extremely important and really popular service that we offer. This is, again, a no cost. This is a free service. Companies can sign up for the Food Export Helpline via our website, and after you've registered online, then you get contacted by our Food Export Helpline counselor, and he has 30 years of experience in assisting food companies with their export questions. So he's extremely knowledgeable. It's a really valuable resource. You can just sign up and then work one-on-one with our export counselor and ask him your questions you might have about documentation or pricing or logistics for exports, and he will provide you some one-on-one assistance and answer any questions you might have. And then lastly, we also do educational seminars and webinars. Webinars, again, are free. You can sign up for those on our website. If you sign up for them, then of course you can participate live and ask questions to the presenter, but then once we're done, we do post all the recordings of the webinars on our site as well. So if you ever go to our website, www.foodexport.org, and then under the export education, get to webinars, you can view all of our pre-recorded webinars that we update pretty frequently. Really valuable. You can listen in and watch at your convenience. So moving into the next slide, the one that's titled Export Essentials. So this is just kind of a recap of what I was mentioning earlier. This is the Export Essentials Online. These are all the different modules that you can access and read about at your leisure. And so a lot of really valuable topics there for you right at your fingertips. Moving on to the next slide, it's our Food Export Helpline slide. So again, this is the service. It's free. You can sign up online and work with our helpline counselor, and you can just take a quick peek here at all these questions or topics that are good conversations that you can have with our Food Export Helpline counselor. So again, he's really knowledgeable himself, as well as he has access to a bunch of different databases. So if you wanted to get some statistics or run data about what markets are great prospects for your products, that's something that he can help you out with as well. So go ahead and move now on to the next slide that says upcoming export education. So of course, it's very important for us to let you know that we are hosting an export education seminar in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's going to be taking place on Tuesday, August 16th. It is going to be located at the Nebraska Innovation Campus, and so it's Food Export Midwest and the Nebraska Department of Ag are hosting it together, and our Food Export Helpline counselor, who I was just referring to, Dennis is his name. He will be the keynote speaker, and he will be covering a lot of these topics down below, like why to export, building your export competence and confidence, understanding the harmonized system. Molly referred to how important it is to know your HS code, your harmonized system code for export. He's going to talk about how you can find that, export regulations and documentation, quoting and pricing your products. So a lot of really valuable information is going to be shared at that seminar if you're interested. Again, Tuesday, August 16th at the Nebraska Innovation Campus. It's $50 per person. We'll go all day, 8:30 to 4:30, and we'll provide lunch. Okay, if you move on to the next slide now, I'm going to start talking quickly about our market entry programs. So this, again, is our way of connecting you, the U.S. businesses, with qualified international buyers. So we have quite a few different ways that we do this. First and foremost, our buyers' missions. This is when we use that network of in-market representatives I alluded to earlier. They will nominate buyers that they're familiar with, that are qualified and that are reputable, that are experienced importers in their markets. They'll nominate them, and we bring them for our buyers' missions. And essentially, it's a chance for U.S. companies to sign up and have sit-down meetings with these qualified international buyers that we flew in from around the world without leaving the Midwest. So you can meet with all these buyers without traveling abroad. And we do a lot of these buyers' mission opportunities throughout the year. Most often, we do them in conjunction with a trade show that's happening in the U.S., but we also do a few, and I'm going to talk on the next slide about our Midwest Buyers Mission that's not related to a trade show. It's just a standalone event that any company who's interested in meeting with the buyers is welcome to participate in. Beyond that, we also have our online product catalog. This is really simple. It's a free service, 24/7 online exposure. If you have an account with our association, then you can upload descriptions of your products. And then what happens is we get trade leads from our network of international buyers that we work with. They say, hey, I'm looking for a supplier of potato chips. And then we will, any company that's in our system that has products in the online product catalog, will send out that trade lead to you. You'll get the trade lead. You'll learn who the buyer is, how you can contact them. And it's up to you if you'd like to follow up with the buyer. But again, it's just 24/7 online exposure. It's free. It's a really easy way to market your product without really any time consumption or anything difficult on your end. Market Builder, this is where our reps that are based in the markets around the world can do custom market research for you. So if you know that you found out that your product has great potential in Japan and you want to get some more primary market research, but you don't want to go travel there, or you don't want to pay a lot of money to have it done in the private sector, you can sign up for our Market Builder service. and we'll contract our representatives to do that market research for you. Really in-depth, great information at a very reduced price for our companies. That's Market Builder. And then we also do focused trade missions. This is kind of the opposite of buyers missions. Rather than us bringing the international buyers to the U.S. that you can sit down and meet with, this is a chance for U.S. companies to travel abroad to the market. So a similar example, you know that you're really interested in Japan and you'd love to meet with a bunch of different buyers in Japan over a few days. Then you can sign up for a focused trade mission and have that opportunity to meet with a lot of buyers while you're there. And then Food Show Plus, lastly, is a service that we offer at various large international trade shows. So if you ever decided, for example, there's a huge trade show that takes place every other year in October in Germany. It's called the Anuga Show. We offer, if you ever decided that you wanted to exhibit at that show, to meet with buyers from all throughout Europe and around the world, really, at that show, then you can also sign up for our Food Show Plus services, where our reps will do market research, set up one-on-one meetings, provide a market briefing, and a lot of trade show enhancement services. So go ahead and move to the next slide, is the Midwest Buyers Mission slide. So this is an event that I definitely wanted to make companies aware of. If you are interested in meeting with international buyers, but you don't want to make the expense of traveling abroad or exhibiting at a trade show, if you don't want to pay for a booth, you can sign up for an activity like our Midwest Buyers Mission. And for this event, this is our biggest buyers mission of the year. We're bringing 18 international buyers from this. They come from all around the world, and we're going to bring them to 3 different Midwest cities. So companies can just choose one city that they want to do the meetings in, whatever is most convenient for them. First, they're flying in Monday, August 1st into Lansing, Michigan. Then on Wednesday the 3rd, they'll be in Madison, Wisconsin. And then on Thursday, August 4th, we'll wrap up in Chicago. And you can see the pictures there. Basically how it works is you get your own 6-foot-long table. You can bring samples. You can bring marketing materials, whatever you'd like to share with the buyers. And then you get a schedule of meetings with the buyers based on who you ranked you most want to meet with. And then you sit down and the buyers move one by one to your table for meetings of about 25 minutes with each buyer. So we joke it's kind of like speed dating, but a chance for you to meet with a whole bunch of different buyers, one-day event, and get a lot of exposure to your products. And we always see a lot of really good results here. The buyers are all qualified and nominated by our international representatives, so a great opportunity. We're also going to have some of these representatives that are going to be there as well, that you can sign up to meet with. So it's a chance for you to talk about your products in their markets and what challenges you might have or what opportunities exist there. And our Food Export Helpline counselor, Dennis, will be there too, so you can sign up to meet with him. So it's a really great event we're excited about. If you want any more information about that, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to tell you more. All right, moving on to the next slide. It's the Market Promotion Branded Program slide that says 50% more international marketing. So this is another really popular and valuable service that we offer. It's called our Branded Program. So move on to the next slide. It says Branded Program. What is the Branded Program? Cost share reimbursement program for eligible companies to receive 50% reimbursement on their international marketing expenses. So how is a company eligible? To be eligible, you need to be a small business as defined by the Small Business Administration. If you're a food manufacturer, that's typically under 500 employees, full-time equivalents. So, pretty lenient there on the small business definition. And you also, the other big requirement is that you do have to be promoting products that are at least 50% United States agricultural content. Since this is a USDA program, that Made in USA or Products of USA is very important. So unfortunately, if you have a company where maybe you sell coffee and 100% of it is imported from Central America, then unfortunately your products would not be eligible. But if you have at least 50% U.S. ag content, then your products would be eligible for this program. And that small business rule actually does not apply to agricultural cooperatives. So if anyone is here with a farmer-owned agricultural cooperative, there's no size limit to participate in the program. Moving on to the next slide. So what are the eligible expenses? What is this program really all about? The branded program can be used for 50% back, and again, this is all think international here. Advertisements and publications, public relations and seminars, promotions and demonstrations, international trade shows. So this is a really popular way that companies use it. If you decide you want to exhibit at this international trade show in Germany, you can use our program for 50% reimbursement on your booth fees and travel costs for 2 company representatives. Certain trade shows held in the U.S., so this is also really important. The Foreign Agricultural Service, who gives us the funding for the program, of course, there's certain trade shows that happen in the U.S. that draw such a big international audience that they've deemed that those shows would be eligible as well. So if you have not exhibited in the past 3 years on your own funding at shows like the Natural Product Show, East or West, at the Fancy Food Shows in San Francisco or New York, the National Restaurant Association Show in Chicago, the Sweets and Snacks Show in Chicago, there's quite a list of shows that are eligible in the U.S. You can actually also use our branded program for 50% reimbursement for exhibiting at those shows, because you'll have that great opportunity to meet with international buyers who will be attending and walking around that show. And then also package and label modifications is eligible. So if you're working with a buyer from Canada and you're really working up the volume that you're exporting to that buyer, and they tell you that you need to now make some permanent package and label modifications to your product to include French or whatever other change is necessary for the importing country, then you can use our branded program for 50% back on any expenses related to those changes that you had to make. Going back, advertisements again, so this could be billboards, TV ads, magazine ads, any way that you're getting your product in front of consumers could be eligible. Also, if you want to add an international section or link on your website, because you get so much attention from international audiences for your products on your website, if you want to add an international side to it, you can also use our branded program for expenses related to that too. So move on to the next slide, the application process. Every year that you want to participate in the program, there's an application process. You'll fill out a pre-qualification just to make sure that your company is eligible. And then you can fill out once that gets approved, you can fill out your application online. This is when you tell us what are your plans to use the program in the year and how much funding do you plan to request from the program. Then it goes through an approval process, and once it's approved, we send out a contract. Then you'll go through and do the activities and then send your reimbursement claims to us, and then we send the reimbursement checks to you. So it is a reimbursement program, so you'll get the funding back after the activity takes place. There is, every year for the program, there's a maximum of $300,000 that a company can get in a given program year. So a pretty big limit. If it's the first time you've ever used the program, we'd prefer to limit to $25,000 in reimbursements. If you go throughout the year and you reach that amount, then we'll consider, and you have additional funding, we'll consider raising that limit. But so start with $25,000 for first users of the program. But as you go through and get more experienced with it, the ceiling gets pretty high. And if you want to move on to the next slide, Just a quick overview of the reimbursement process. There's a few things that we need to see for every expense that you want to get 50% back on. We do need to see a copy of the invoice, the proof of payment, like how did you pay the vendor for what you did. Proof of activity would be something like if you were exhibiting at an international trade show and you wanted reimbursement, we do need to see a photo of your booth at the show, and it needs to have some kind of Made in USA or Products of USA to be eligible, because again, a USDA program, you've got to have that visible for your proof of USA. So that's the gist of the branded program. Molly here, who spoke in the first half, she's the branded program manager here at Food Export Midwest. So you would be working with her. I can help out with the application process. That's my job. And then Molly will be the one kind of working with you a little bit more hands-on once you're really involved in the program. But you can go ahead and just move along to the next slide. It's kind of our wrap-up slide here. How can we help you? Here's the link to our website, www.foodexport.org, where you can learn more about these programs and services. If you don't have an account with us, if you've never worked with us before, you can create an account for your company on our website, and that will allow you to move forward with registering for any of our programs that are of interest to you. And you can also, of course, on our website, branded program, everything with that is done online, the pre-qualification and the application, so you'll need to have an account to get started with that. So that's it for what we have in the slides, but we will gladly, still got Molly here, so if you guys have any questions for either her half of the presentation or my half, we can certainly address those right now. Heidi did send us a few questions right off the bat that I think came in before the presentation even happened. One of the listeners wanted to know, his question was if he needs special labeling. I'm guessing that he's asking if for every time he exports, does he need a special label to that market? The short answer is it depends. It's kind of complicated. Every country has different rules and regulations about labeling. Sometimes if you're going into business with a buyer, they may want you to go ahead and make that change up front to your package and labeling for their market so that they can do wide distribution. I know in some other markets, if you start off with a small order, they may just be fine with you doing a temporary sticker to meet those requirements. So yeah, unfortunately, there's no easy answer. It really kind of just depends on country to country, but I think it's valuable to know that the branded program is available to help you if you do want to make permanent changes to package and label for export.
One thing I would add to that is just not to change your label until you have a buyer connection. Sometimes we see people change their label before they have a export sale, and that isn't necessary. That's a really big cost to incur up front. So definitely just wait so you know that it's needed, and from there we'll help you out as much as we can.
Yeah, generally buyers are pretty helpful about that. You know, if you're working with a buyer for the first time, they'll let you know what the requirements are in their market and what they would like you to do to be compliant.
I can answer. We had another question come in. A listener wanted to know how to ensure that the buyers that you're working with are reputable and that you can meet all the documentation requirements. There's a couple ways to check and see if the buyer is reputable. If you're working with the U.S. Commercial Service or with Food Export or another agency, we have connections overseas and can ask our on-the-ground staff overseas if they know of the buyer. So that's one way to look into that. I've also heard a really great recommendation that you should ask the buyer for references. So see if they're working with other companies and get their information. If they're a true buyer, then they'll have really good customers and U.S. suppliers that they're already working with. So those suppliers can just give you some more backup and information that you need. There's also just online resources that can help you out with that as well. In terms of the documentation requirements, this is really going to vary by market. So depending on which country you go to, different documents are required. You're also going to have different documents depending on the buyer that you're working with. Sometimes the buyer is going to take care of basically everything for you. They'll pick up your product at your dock and export it and sell it, and you won't see it again. Other buyers will have you ship it to the border or ship it to their country. And in that case, you would need more paperwork. So it just depends on the buyer connections that you're forming. Whatever the buyer connection is, we can help you out with figuring out what documentation you need. Our Export Essentials that Paul mentioned is a good resource just to see what kinds of documentation might be required and who you would need to go to get those ready. That was it for questions beforehand. Did anyone else have any questions come up while we were talking?
Well, Molly, I was wondering if you could repeat the name of the organization they should go to if they are not a food producer. Was that the Department of Commerce?
Oh, yeah. So that's the U.S. Commercial Service. And again, that's through the Department of Commerce, so they handle anything non-ag related. The woman's name that handles Nebraska is Meredith Bond, and she is out of Omaha, but she'll travel throughout the state to help you out. I'll send out her email address after this meeting, but she's a great resource. There's also a woman named Susan Roche who works out of the Nebraska Department of Economic Development, and she would help any company that's involved in export, be they agricultural-based or not. She's out of Lincoln and is also a good resource. I would say out of the people in Nebraska that really get exporting, those Meredith and Susan are really good contacts. So I'll send out their email addresses after the meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you.
For the Midwest Buyers Mission, do you know what buyers are looking for? Do you have a list of what products they're looking for in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I didn't mention it while I was speaking about it, but what we do is you can, on our website, you can go to the activity page for the Midwest Buyers Mission, and perhaps we can include this link when we send this out too. But on the website, you can access what we call the document that's the buyer's profiles. So really valuable. It will list all the buyers, who they are, where they come from, and what types of products they're interested in. So we share that with companies ahead of time to give you a chance to see who it is that we're bringing, and you can make that decision then, as you look through the profiles. Oh, yeah, we see a lot of potential matches here. We'd love to sign up to meet with these buyers, or as you go through it, you didn't see any potential there, then you can make that decision.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Actually, I have one. I was wondering, Susan Roche's department, I kind of missed that, Nebraska Department of
Economic Development.
Economic Development. Economic Development. And I'll send out our email and their website.
Thank you very much.
Are there any additional questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Molly and Paul. This was a very informative presentation, and we'd love to see more Nebraska products being exported. So if anybody here is interested, we hope you'll, take it to the next level. If you enjoyed this presentation, we do have a free presentation on different topics every single month on the third Thursday of the month. You can find out more on the training page of grownebraska.org. And I will be sending out both the recording from this presentation and a short survey after the call. So if you have some feedback for us, we would love to get that. So thank you all again for attending. Thank you so much, Paul and Molly. And thank you again to the Local Food Promotion Program of the Agricultural Marketing Service from the U.S. Department of Agriculture for sponsoring. So I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Heidi.